We want to be as punctual as possible since we value everyone's time. We're very excited to have you join our webinar today. My name is Rose Singleton, and I'm one of the 4 interns at the Unitarian Universalist Association office at the United Nations. Feel free to introduce yourself in the chat box as you enter and get settled into our webinar. Time permitting, we will be doing a Q&A at the end of the event. So if you'd like to save your questions for that time, you can either do that or type them into the chat box. Right now, I'm going to pass the virtual mic over to Bruce Knox. He's the director of the UU at the UN office. He'll be moderating this event and will further introduce our speakers. Once again, welcome. Thank you for joining us today. Bruce, it's all yours.
Thank you, Rose. Our first speaker today is Stacie Brennan from Lehigh University Art Galleries. I have to say that Lehigh University has one of the best UN engagement programs I'm aware of. Stacie joined Lehigh University Art Galleries as the inaugural curator of education in September 2019, where she is responsible for developing educational programs and resources that support Lehigh's exhibitions and collections that foster meaningful encounters with art and ideas. She had a couple of other jobs as director prior to this with Arts Quest and also with Mainline Center. Please welcome Stacie Brennan.
Thank you, Bruce. I'm gonna share my screen now and welcome everyone. Thank you so much for having me here today. As Bruce said, can you see my screen? Okay, great. So as Bruce said, I am the curator of education for Lehigh University Art Galleries. We are a free museum located on Lehigh University's campus. We have over 18,000 works of art from diverse time periods and cultures within our collection. We serve the community, and we're dedicated to serving the community as a space for learning about diverse perspectives. We do that through 7 galleries across campuses, so we kind of reach out to where students are. We partner with faculty and staff for student study centers. We have a reading room and 56 outdoor sculptures across our 3 campuses. We are committing to making the collection and exhibitions and experiences inclusive and accessible, both in person and online, for individual and collective learning, teaching, scholarship, and creative practices, as well as civic engagement and general enjoyment. In the times that we are in, museums everywhere really have the potential to serve as agents of change, bringing people together, contributing to local communities, and changing people's lives. Thought leaders in our field are challenging the museums to become change makers and to demand that they are taking action toward positive social change and bringing people together in a more just, equitable, compassionate, and connected society. In a time of challenge and transition that we're in currently, how can museums refocus on individual and collective care? And how can we how can culture and community practitioners play a role in reimagining what's possible, where we can really celebrate the full range of stories and experiences of humanity to build a better future? In line with Lehigh University Art Gallery's mission to focus our efforts around building community well-being and building service access and equity, LUAG presents a variety of free public programs annually that range from lectures to symposia to hands-on art making and student-led workshops that really foster meaningful encounters with art and ideas. I'm gonna talk about a few of those. Feel free to ask me questions. I think that our goals really are to meet the genuine needs of the community by celebrating and embracing that connection between creativity and well-being. We offer LUAG community days and connect and create workshops where Participants have the opportunity to explore great works of art in our collection, as well as our current exhibitions through conversation, hands-on projects, and sketching. These are taught by local teaching artists, and they are in partnership with community service organizations.
Stacie, sorry to interrupt, but we're not seeing your screen.
Oh, no.
We're seeing something that actually says Stacie Brennan has started screen sharing, and that's, so we're actually not seeing the screen.
Oh, well, I had lots of great images that I was showing.
I figured you would.
Okay,
So
let me try this again.
Maybe refreshing or something might help.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt.
That's okay. I checked to see if there were any notes in the, let's try this again. Sorry about that, and I'm sorry to waste time. I will pick up right where I left off. Let's try this again. It's not even giving me the option now. Okay, let's do this again. How about now?
Works now.
You see a picture of people doing yoga in the gallery.
Yes,
okay, great.
yes.
I'll show you real quickly. So this is where we started. Museums as change makers. These are some examples of family programs that we have in our galleries. We offer mindfulness and yoga classes through programs like Yoga for Everybody or Taste of Art. We also offer symposia and different opportunities for professional development. This is an example of Critical Lens. Can you still see the screen? I just want to make sure. Okay, so I made a small change. So this was called Critical Lens, Understanding Media Literacy Through Photographs. It was a creative convening for students, educators, artists, and media makers around the question of how does photography in all its forms shape how we make meaning about the world and about ourselves. This was hosted by the art galleries in partnership with the National Association of Media Literacy Education, the Pennsylvania Art Education Association, and departments on campus like journalism, psychology, and art, architecture, and design, and was funded through a U.S. Department of State grant. It offered both lectures, but also hands-on experiences, which is essential for critical learning in our galleries. And at the core of all of our work is the campus community. Through partnerships with student organizations, we develop events and experiences that empower students to be active and engaged citizens. For the first time last year, our students had off from classes. The university canceled classes and encouraged them to participate in Election Day. We hosted discussions, debates, and hands-on workshops like letter writing and reportage illustration drawing workshops that were very successful in getting students to think about their world and their active citizenship in different ways. Students are also critical stakeholders in identifying and participating in collection acquisitions. This past spring, students in our museum studies class were given a budget and put forth, and they were told to put forth arguments for works that they thought, in their opinion, speak to the times in which we live. These are two works by Karlee Raven-Holton, who is a local artist and also was a professor at Lafayette College and the founder of the institute, the Experimental Printmaking Institute at Lafayette. And so I wanted to also talk about students in the curation process. So last fall, we worked with students and faculty from the departments of history, political science, communication, journalism, and art, architecture, and design to co-curate an exhibition called Doing Democracy. This exhibition offered the opportunity for students to identify themes and topics that resonated with them from a selection of over 2,000 photographs that were donated to the university from George Stephanopoulos. The students selected 107 photographs, which can be seen arranged into clusters or groupings of photographs to tell the story of democracy in the United States and shine a light through a photographer's lens on significant events from the 20th century to the present. The photos feature images from the civil rights movement. Seen here is young John Lewis, an American politician and civil rights activist. It also showed leaders and individuals who provide sources of strength and leadership. Seen here is Fannie Lou Hamer on the right here, as well as celebrations of joy in everyday Americans. And what was really special about this exhibition was we due to challenges with COVID, partnered with our local city to bring the exhibition out into the community through reproductions of the photographs on the South Bethlehem Greenway, which is a 1.9-mile walking trail through the center of the city. Here we had the opportunity for the community to engage with the work. They could scan QR codes and listen to student-produced videos and resources.
Stacie, I'm sorry to interrupt you again, but the screen is shrank, so I can only see tiny little pictures. I don't know if it's just me.
So are you seeing my notes?
We're seeing your
Possibly,
notes.
yeah.
We're seeing your notes in the large screen, and the pictures are to the side. There you go.
Yeah.
Now it's
Very
good.
strange. It's not supposed to do that. Okay, well then I won't use my notes. I wanted to show an example here of a video that was student produced because it's important for us to show how students are critical stakeholders in developing educational and interpretive materials for our exhibitions. So I'm just going to show this here. Hopefully this works.
In the southern United States, Jim Crow laws enforced racial segregation until the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1965. Taken by Danny Lyon, this scene took place 3 years prior in Nashville, Tennessee, in front of a restaurant called the TikTok Hamburger Place. Lyon captured Lester McKinney, Bernice Regan, and John O'Neill in what at first seems to be 3 people standing to get inside. Throughout the South, sit-ins and boycotts took place in public establishments such as this restaurant. It is evident that this is in fact a snapshot of a demonstration against segregation. A white waitress is peering at them through the window glass, while other white customers surround the 3. Bernice Regan was a founding member of the Freedom Singers, a student quartet group that toured the US during the Civil Rights Movement. The group was known to use communal songs as a form of empowerment and education to those involved in the movement against Jim Crow segregation. She then founded the all-women African-American a cappella ensemble, Sweet Honey in the Rock, and she continues to work towards social justice through community singing and scholarship. After graduating college, John O'Neill founded the Free Southern Theater with 2 other artists. The group provided free shows primarily in predominantly Black towns with little access to theater. O'Neill hoped to bring the power of theater to Black Americans and encourage them to articulate their own stories, and continued to bring performance arts to many audiences throughout his life. And finally, Lester McKinney joined the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee and became a prominent figure in the demonstrations against segregation in Nashville. He was later a project director for the Mississippi Freedom Summer Project, a volunteer campaign during June 1964 to register as many Black American voters as possible. One cannot help but recall similar scenes of protest and civil disobedience happening today, yesterday, and the day before. For access to opportunity, but more urgently, for the right to take up space, to exist, to live. Relentless, interconnected battles fought in our past, continuing in our present.
So you can see how this was one student's interpretation of this photograph and how students are critical in kind of the research, the implementation of the programming, and stakeholders in developing our exhibitions and programs at the university. The next exhibition I kind of wanted to bring into the future was what we currently have on view, which is Hear Me Roar, which is a celebration of 10 female photographers who have various bodies of work within the Lehigh University Art Gallery's collection, and is in partnership with a celebration of 50 years of women at Lehigh. And so this collection ranges from some amazing photographs from Janine McNabb-Bales, who documented over nearly 2,000 miles of the Underground Railroad, taking photographs at night and kind of showing what enslaved people who were trying to escape from freedom had to go through during that time period. Eugenia Vargas Pereira also is a photographer in our collection who used her body and imagery during a feminist movement to really bring about issues of environmentalism and challenges that women face across the world. Kristen Kapp is a documentary photographer who photographs time and place and is really focusing on kind of identity, both as individual and collective identity. And this is work that she did while teaching in Namibia. And then Donna Ferrado is another photographer in this exhibition who started the I Am Unbeatable campaign to bring awareness to challenges against women and domestic violence and relationships. And she documented stories and photographs, as well as interviews that is still ongoing. And into the present, we currently have Young, Gifted, and Black on view, which is an exhibition from the Lumpkin Bakuzi family collection of contemporary art. This exhibition celebrates 2 generations of African-American artists who are bringing their voices to the forefront in various mediums and different ways. There are over 40 artists in this exhibition, from Kara Walker to D'Angelo Lovell-Williams. These artists are really trying to explore different ways of defining the issues that they're facing, but also kind of rewriting historical narrative in art. And so we have just this amazing collection, as well as a variety of ongoing virtual discussions and in-person programs that celebrate these works and also bring the community together. You can view all of these works on our website, as well as the resources that I shared. I'm sorry that I had some trouble with my PowerPoint presentation, but I hope that you will go to our website to view these resources. Under the art section, you can see all of the exhibitions, both past and present. You can go under the Learn section to view student voices, writing, videos. And then we also have a digital collection of works on view. Of the 18,000 in our collection, we're at nearly 5,000 currently, which is an amazing resource for kind of viewing works, creating presentations, and for personal and professional enjoyment. So we hope that you'll visit our website at luag.org and follow us online at LU Art Galleries on social media. We have a variety of events coming up that we welcome you to join us for. And just so thrilled to be part of this discussion today for how art can be kind of a convener for community and for helping us to explore our own well-being, both individually and collectively. So thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you so much, Stacie. It was a very powerful presentation, and I'm glad that we did get to see all of the images, even though there was a little glitches, but that's what Zoom life is all about. Our next speaker is Marissa Gutierrez-Vicario, and apologies for any mispronunciation of your name. She's the founder and executive director of Arts and Resistance Through Education. She launched art in 2013 to help young people amplify their voices and organize for human rights change in their communities through the visual arts. In the spring of 2021, Marissa served as a Soros visiting practitioner, chair at the School of Public Policy at Central European University in Vienna, Austria. Currently, she serves as adjunct lecturer at the City College of New York in the Art Education Department, and is an artist in residence at the Initiative for Just Society at Columbia University. Please welcome Marissa.
Hello, hello, thank you. Can folks hear me? Awesome, awesome. Thank you so much for having me and inviting me to be in this space. Thank you to the other presenters to see their artwork and what they're so passionate about. And then also thank you to all of you for being here and your interest in this artivism that we're here to talk about. So yeah, I would love, I think Rose is gonna share the screen, which I really appreciate. Thank you. And I'm gonna say next or as we begin. Yeah, and so I'll wait until they come up. But first off, so again, my name is Marissa, I go by she, her. What I'll be talking about specifically today is looking at how art can be used as a way to amplify the rights of youth in jail, and looking at supporting incarcerated artists and using art as a way to bring up the issue of mass incarceration in this country, in the United States, and also thinking about art as a tool for abolition. So First off, I'll say, when the slide comes up, first off, as a disclaimer, I want to be very transparent about, wonderful, this is awesome, so awesome. And and when you're ready, we can go to the next slide. But when we work with folks, incarcerated folks, we have community members we care about. I don't identify as someone who has been a part of the carceral system. So I want to be transparent about that, because I think it is important to think about how we use art as a way to amplify other voices and support other people's voices, and have, we don't give voices to anyone, including young people. We work to amplify their voices. So I want to be transparent, but also think about what it means to be in proximity with folks who are incarcerated, and also those who have been recently released, and what does it mean to work with folks and as a community. So that is my disclaimer. The next slide you'll see, I actually would love if folks could put it in the chat. I'm not giving you any context, but what do these objects have in common to you all? And you can just throw them in the chat really quickly. So I'm seeing school, so objects used in school, yes. What else? Paper, most definitely. And expression tool, so there's a paper cup, and there's a small pencil, and there's also a Post-it note just for folks. Color tools, objects that help us in daily life, studying, yes. Use your hands to hold them. I'm sharing this with you actually really quickly as just a framing. Prior to COVID, Arte and the work that I did, which I'll explain in a second, we went and worked with incarcerated students. And sometimes we're allowed to bring in supplies, sometimes we're not. And sometimes these were the only supplies we had available. So thinking about also if art is a tool for justice and art as a human right, thinking about like, what does it mean to work in incarcerated spaces and people not having access to the basic supplies, or sometimes the most minimal supplies. So I just wanted to keep that in mind, and thinking about, what folks, oftentimes the creative means that people have to go through in order to create something. And not all programs are the same. The incarcerated spaces and facilities differ across the country and across the world, but knowing that at what great lengths that people take in order to create and use art as a tool of self-expression. So next slide. Arte, so context about my work and the work that I do with my community. Arte works to engage people to amplify their voices and organize for human rights change through the visual arts. Next. So I think you'll see a lot about this today across the three presentations, but we use the arts as a platform for human rights change, because art is a way for the individual, like all of yourselves, to call upon your right to create something to express our own human creativity and connectivity. We also use art as a way of activating parts of people's brains that you normally may not have the opportunity to explore. And then also we use art as a process that allows us to constantly question and explore, and we never have to settle on a right answer. Next. A part of our work, we talk about human rights. So we're a social justice organization, but we focus primarily on human rights and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So as you can see here, we actually work to redesign it with an organization called Thought Matter. So I just wanted to share that with you really quickly. Next slide. We also use the visual arts in three specific ways. So one is education discovery. So thinking about how to teach about human rights in a safe, personalized, and exploratory context. A lot of students, not all of them, but many experience direct violations to their rights, whether they're incarcerated, whether they are folks who have had to cross borders and been affected by the state in that way. So we're thinking about, how do we create a space where they can fully express themselves, their lives, and the violations they may feel passionate about and or experience. And then lastly, we think about presentation, right? So how do you advocate for human rights change in your own community and across the globe, and why we use the visual arts to do so. So next. So this particular piece, again, as a framing of the specific topic I'm talking about today, it was a temporary mural done in East Harlem. So for folks who are familiar with New York City, and we worked with a group of students who wanted to learn a little bit more about mass incarceration and specifically how women are affected as a part of the system. So they created this piece. It was a piece that, if you obviously can't see it, but it was wheat pasted inside of the words "prison is a feminist issue." You could actually see images of women, incarcerated women, that they found online, that sometimes misconceptions of women, and they actually created this piece. And it was such a learning experience for them. One was that they, a lot of them hadn't been familiar with the concept of incarceration. Some of it was limited to Orange is the New Black, some of what we see in the media, and some folks actually had may have had loved ones, but through the process of creation, they were given a chance to explore more of what their understanding of incarceration and what does it mean to become an advocate around the prison industrial complex. Next slide. Artivism, obviously, while we're here, and I think artivism, we'll talk about this more in depth, this intersection of art and activism and art medium used for social change. So along with our human rights framework, we utilize this idea of artivism across all of our different projects. Next. So this may be, people may be familiar with this already. This is a very quick overview about the US system of mass incarceration. As I mentioned, or Bruce mentioned, I spent a little bit of time in Europe this past year, and a lot of folks don't actually know what's happening. Many do, some of them don't. Some of them actually have parallel experiences in their own countries, but they're not talking about mass incarceration, or they're unaware of what the huge problem that we have in the United States that activists have been working on for decades, and now we're slowly seeing folks continue that advocacy, right? So brief overview, you may know more about this, put it in the chat, I would love to hear. Next slide. So just, again, some of this might be a review for folks, but I wanted to make sure you had the context in terms of why we use art in this way. US is considered the world's leader in incarceration and mass incarceration. There are currently 2 million, and that number is actually much more if you're counting people on parole, other people involved in the prison system. So that's actually, there's much more. This is a 500% increase over the last 40 years, and this is from the Sentencing Project. Next slide. Also from the Equal Justice Initiative, if folks don't know about them already, please check them out. And they actually also have some really fantastic resources that use art to talk about the story of the historical legacy of slavery to mass incarceration. But the US has 5% of the world's population and nearly 25% of incarcerated folks. So that's huge. That's like, I can say this to you out loud, I can share this, but that is actually, if you actually process that, how horrible that is. I just want folks to sit and think about that for a second, just because, and actually I'll read it again. And they use the word prisoners, we don't, but the US has 5% of the world's population, but nearly 25% of the incarcerated people. So next slide. Given that we are, and this is just some other facts, and then we'll talk about youth. Also, I just mentioned a project we did on artivism around women. Between 1980 and 2019, the number of incarcerated women has increased by more than 700%. That's huge. And then, of course, thinking about racial inequity, Black men are 6 times more likely to be incarcerated than white men, and Latinos, Latinx are 2.5 as likely. For Black men in their 30s, about 1 in every 12 is in prison or jail on any given day. And that is from the Sentencing Project as well. And the next slide, you will see, and this is where we feel particularly motivated as a youth organization to think about how does this impact young people, right? We work with young people all the time. This is, whether it's in school, whether it's our digital programming, and being aware that the impact of this on youth. So in 2017, Black youth were 5 times more likely to be incarcerated than white youth. So this is something we think about with our students, but also think about, what is advocacy and how can we use art as a tool to address this grave human rights violation. Next. Also, for folks that aren't familiar, the school to prison pipeline, we talk about children who are funneled out of school and into the criminal justice system due to zero tolerance policies in their schools. And then also, things we're not talking about. We're not talking about how students may have histories of poverty, abuse, and neglect. And we're not thinking about also how young students of color, which is the students that we primarily work with, how they may be especially vulnerable to discriminatory practices. Next. So I am sharing this image here because for me, this is 2 things, right? One is when we go into jail, this is something that we see, but also when we go into schools, this is something we see. So you'll see a picture of a metal detector. So just thinking, it breaks my heart, but I think a lot about this in terms of how it could be either, right? And how, how this is an image that really resonates in my mind and thinking about the school to prison pipeline that I had just mentioned. Next. One piece of artwork that I think really ties together what we're talking about. And if folks don't know about this, please Google, check it out. This was a piece of artwork done by Caleb Nealon and Katie Yamasaki, who I'll talk about later at the very end. So this was in honor of Kalief Browder from 1993 to 2015. And again, for folks that don't know, this Kalief Browder was a teenager. He spent 2 years of solitary confinement at Rikers Island in New York, and he committed suicide in 2015 after he was released as a result of the emotional trauma he had suffered during confinement. So thinking about 2 years in solitary confinement, I mean, studies showing that even after a few weeks, someone in solitary confinement already has psychological effects and trauma from that. So, you know, again, this was a memorial to him as not forget about him, and also understanding that he is not to ensure that this doesn't happen to anyone ever again. So I want to put that out there, is just how this is a memorial, but it's also a kind of a promise to ensure that this advocacy continues. Thank you. Next slide. So with Artivism, we think a lot about, you know, art programming for human rights education in incarcerated spaces. And I think some folks have heard about this project, but one project that we've done with Arte, which you'll see on the next slide, is we created a program called Global Women Heroes. So next, you'll see, actually, I'll give you a little bit of background. First off, we believe that instead of implementing stricter disciplinary policies, schools should actually provide counseling and educational services through art. And we also think that the art can take place in many forms. And this is a quote by Alex M. Johnson, which I really love. But we think that arts can essentially help improve achievement in school, and it's a critical strategy. Arts, it's oftentimes arts are the first thing to be defunded, the first thing to be pushed out of the school. But in fact, they are one of the most important strategies for helping to dismantle human rights abuses and helping to dismantle this school to prison pipeline, which I just referenced. Next slide. So yeah, I will quickly go over this, but for Arte, we did a project called Global Women Heroes now several years ago. Now we've transitioned more to digital programming, including our new program called Youth Voices Lead Abolition. But we worked on the next slide, you'll see, we worked with a group of students on the inside. So we work with students in jail to create a mural on the outside with a group of other students focusing on 6 different global women activists. So the next few slides you'll just see are just images of the work. So next. And this is actually, if you're in New York, this is in Harlem 116th. Next. So it would serve twofold, right? One is the idea that students on the inside and outside were both learning about a particular curriculum together, or even if it was not the same time. And then also to bring attention to the fact that young people are incarcerated. And so anyone who passes the mural could learn about the different women, but also learn that it was a project by incarcerated students. Next. I won't read both of these, but I think one thing is we wanted to mention, and I'll show you a little bit if I have time, is prison art. And art that has been created by folks in prison is a form of resistance towards prison life in a way that people can use it to uplift humanity, for rehabilitation, self-expression, and liberation. Next. So there are a few artists, but 2 main artists that I want to share about who use art as a tool to better understand the human rights violations that happen within the system and as a way of resisting the carceral system. So on the next slide, you'll see art as a tool for addressing and healing trauma. Next. This particular artist, if folks haven't seen, is called the hashtag Unbroken by Bars. And this was a public art and storytelling project which creates art from messages of previously incarcerated mothers and children that are shared with their children during incarceration. So it's actually a public mural project, and it's a wheat pasting project. And I've actually come across it on the street, I think in Brooklyn, but and as you can see, it's a depiction of a mother and their child with wings. And I love this. As an anti-shackling activist, I am creating a future free from mass incarceration. So this was done by Jessica Snow with Katie Fuller and other community members. Next. So I mentioned Katie Yamasaki. She did a project called If Walls Could Talk. And this was also in East Harlem. And it was a project, very powerful project. It was created by, the first mural was designed by incarcerated mothers at Rikers Island and then painted for their children in East Harlem. So you'll see here, this is actually this is on the outside. This is actually in East Harlem. And the children also did a project for, the children themselves designed a project for their mothers that was actually painted inside of the jail for their mothers. So you'll see on the next slide here, yeah, that was the piece. So it was a two-part piece. And again, I love this idea. It breaks my heart in the sense that like, I wish that there was no barrier and there was no between these the two groups, and that their young people could be with their mothers. But it also, I do love in the sense that it is a way of them communicating with each other and showing their love and creating gifts for each other, even though there is this physical barrier. So yeah, next slide. So art as a tool for the recognition of human rights for incarcerated and formerly incarcerated individuals. So like I said, we use art as a tool to amplify the voices of folks who have been directly impacted. And these specific examples really quickly are folks who are using their artwork, again, to share their own stories, but also figuring out ways to uplift the voices of other folks who have been incarcerated. So Russell Craig is one of them. He's a self-taught artist based out of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. He started creating artwork while in, his passion was rekindled while in jail. And one piece you'll see on the next slide, he did this piece where he took the paperwork that he had accumulated in jail. And oftentimes I've seen firsthand, like there's a lot of paperwork with numbers and data. And so he actually took that paperwork that he was given once he was released, and he created a self-portrait using that. So, and he says here, I decided instead to do something creative with the papers. And that's how the idea started, to do a portrait on them. So it was his way of like taking ownership over his own identity and allowing viewers to see what he has survived and overcome as part of having been part of the system. Next slide. Jesse Crimes. So there's actually a lot of really interesting work that Jesse Crimes is, and I highly recommend both Russell Craig and Jesse Crimes checking them out and supporting artists and incarcerated artists whenever and always possible. Jesse is also a Philadelphia-based artist, and he also created this fellowship that supports other artists. On the next slide, you'll see this is one of his most famous pieces, which I often like to share about, called Apocalyptin 1638967. That number was the number that was designated to him by the state. That was his prison number, if you will. So he created, it was a multi-year project, and he used, these are the materials he used. He used 39 contraband prison cells, prison sheets, hair gel, toothpaste, plastic spoons, soap, and New York Times clippings. So I actually had the honor of doing a workshop with him. He led at Columbia, and I always like to share this, like basically he took New York Times clippings, he put gel on it, and then pasted it onto a sheet, and then used a spoon to leave an imprint. It's actually really hard to leave an imprint. And actually on the next slide, you'll see the fruits of his labor. So this is what he created. This is 39 sheets. They were each individually smuggled out at some point in his, this picture, I think, was one of the first pictures he took in front of the artwork as it was all together. And you'll see here, it's massive, it's beautiful, it's huge. Next slide, you'll see, oh yeah, I love this quote. He says, "The mural is a product of its conditions. I developed the mural as a way to transcend the conditions of prison and all the negative things that go on in that environment on a personal level. The work is personal and autobiographical, but it is also meant to expose the system." Next, please. So yeah, this is a close-up of his work, which I really love, and just, such care, such, painstaking efforts to create this, but as a way, again, to bring attention to the system itself and to expose the system. Next slide, please. So one question I want folks to think about, and maybe we can talk about it depending on how much time. If someone wants to give me maybe a little heads up of how much time we have left. But one question we constantly think of is, how do we use art to amplify the needs, voices of those who are currently incarcerated and formerly incarcerated? That's something we think about a lot in our work. On the next slide, we also think about, how do we use art as a tool, again, back to this artivism, as a tool for advocacy and awareness around incarceration abolition. So next slide, you'll see, this is just a thing that we created, thinking about the prison industrial complex, thinking about the pillars that uphold, this is by no means complete or comprehensive, or do we pretend to be, an abolitionist scholar? There's so many other folks that you should read and look at, but like, This is just thinking about like what the things that uphold prison industrial complex includes the war on drugs and crime, the privatization of prisons, the historical legacy of slavery and racism, and of course the over-policing of communities of color. But on the other side, you can see on the next slide, you can see that we're also thinking about abolition itself, right? So what does it mean to transform and heal communities? What does it mean to invest in communities and community-based solutions and reparations? And what does it mean to have access to jobs, housing, and mental health resources? And one abolitionist scholar, Miriam Kaba, highly recommend, please read her if you haven't. I actually will read this quote because I think it's important. Changing everything might sound daunting, but it also means there are many places to start, infinite possibilities to collaborate, and endless imaginative interventions and experiments to create. Let's not begin our abolitionist journey not with the question, what do we have now and how can we make it better? Instead, let's ask, what can we imagine for ourselves and the world? If we do that, then boundless possibilities of a more just world await us. On the next slide, you'll see, we just, a part of our work, and again, on the theme of artivism, is we're advocating for us, other arts organizations, to continue to fight for funding for art, artists, and cultural spaces. And when we say adequate access to the arts, we're not just talking about schools. Schools need it, community spaces, but we're also talking about jails, and also we're looking at alternatives to incarceration. Next, you'll see, I also just want to share this because I think it's so clever, and it's just like a simple way. This was created by students in the MA program at Parsons and New School. And if you're in New York City right now, and you may not be, for a while, Rikers Island, the jail, was not located on the map. And I don't know if folks noticed that. So for the longest time, it wasn't. So what these students did is they created these stickers that you could put on top of the subway maps, and it says Rikers is here. Next slide. And I love this because I think at any given time, there's like 10,000 people at Rikers. It's slowly changing because of the pandemic, and no one should be there. But I love it because it's the idea that is what they say here. So affixed to an MTA map, the sticker aims to expose an institutional presence and implicate commuters in the carceral state. To hashtag See Rikers is an attempt to identify a physical space, as well as to activate a space of appearance where critical debates and conversations can unfold. Next. These are just some other artists here. This is Nicholas Lampert, Just Seeds Collective. This is Joss McPhee. Again, and these are all graphics I think you can use and download, so long as I think you're credited in the artist. But on the left, you'll see this idea of the milk carton that was traditionally used when someone went disappearing. They put their picture on the milk carton, and here you'll see 2.3 million Americans missing from their family, friends, and community. Next. I highly recommend a lot of Jesse Crimes, Russell Craig, a lot of this artwork, including the mural that we created, Arte, is in this book called Marking Time by Dr. Nicole Fleetwood. I highly recommend it. It's called Marking Time, Art in the Age of Mass Incarceration. So please check that out if you get a chance. Next. Also, please support local organizations that are using artivism in their work. So Survived and Punished is a coalition of campaigns and grassroots organizations, especially around how to eradicate the criminalization of people who are survivors of domestic and sexual violence. And you can actually check out their artwork and their art gallery they have here. And this was by Eliza Petty. Next. So again, we think about, I'll read at least one of them. We imagine a world where an exploitative and harmful mass incarceration system no longer exists, including privatized prisons that profit off the labor of incarcerated individuals. Next. If you get a chance, perhaps while other people are talking, I would love if folks could think about, what does a world without incarceration look like? You can perhaps draw it, take a piece of paper, and what do you envision as that world, and what does it look like? Next. What do you reimagine? Also, the last few slides, which I'll go next, we think that art manifests hope and hope manifests justice. That's part of the work we do. We think that through the arts, we can reimagine a different world. And then please stay in touch. This is our website, our Facebook. We also have a whole page that is dedicated to the ongoing crisis at Rikers. If you want to check it out, it's artejustice.org/Rikers-crisis. Please check that out. And then lastly, and I'll be done, we also have a fundraiser tomorrow, actually. So you're welcome to come. This is the link I'll put in the chat. Come, show up, hear some artists perform. We'd love to have you. It is a fundraiser, so if you want to contribute, but also if you just want to come and would like a complimentary ticket, please just direct message me. We want people to show up and be there and see how beautiful the world can be when art is used as a tool for activism. So thank you so much. Usually I don't talk this much. Usually it's more interactive, but I really appreciate being in this space with you all. It was amazing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marissa. Very powerful presentation. You actually make me feel very good about what I did last night. I was part of a group that met with the District Attorney's Office of Manhattan, and we were talking about finding alternatives to incarceration, and we really do need to abolish it altogether. Our next two speakers are Carolina, I'm going to mess up these names, Cambronero, Varela, co-founder of Artivism, which is an initiative that aims to generate community through multidisciplinary teamwork for a more dignified and meaningful coexistence. And also Argie Moutafis-Agelarakis, I messed that up, sorry, is a scientific archaeological illustrator and painter. She earned a BFA at the School of Visual Arts for her and her MA at Adelphi University. And they have other speakers that they will introduce to us. It's a really great program, and I look forward to hearing from all of you. And sorry for my mispronouncing your names.
Not to worry, Mr. Knotts. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. Come on, can I hear it? Let's see all the audience present here. Just as a little transition here, we'd like to thank Marissa also for being one of our presenters in the Artivism series. And we hope that Ms. Brennan also might think coming over and be one of the participants in the series. Before we start with the presentation, I would like to ask all of our audience here, and I hope I can see you. Can you see me all? Can I get a thumbs up in there somewhere? Yeah? Okay, good, good. Again, thank you for the organizers of this event, so powerful and so important in our time. The question is the following. Just take a second and think of a master painting that comes to mind and put it in the chat. The first thing that comes to mind, what is a master painting? Who is the author of that painting? Then second, think about a work of art in music. Who is the producer of that work of art? And one last one before we get started is, what about in literature? Can you give me your favorite author from the top of your head? Don't think it too much. Just who is your favorite author or a master work in literature that is studied in the schools? What name comes to mind? All right, we'll get back to that. Think about it as we progress in this presentation, because all this is what Artivism is about. All right, Professor Argie, take it away.
Professor Argie, I think you're muted.
There we go. Okay, sorry. Yeah, so thank you for having us. We'll try and stay within the time. This is our second year. We just started our third season about 2 weeks ago. You can see all of our presentations on YouTube at Artivism for Shared Humanity. Most all of them are. I think we've had about 33 presenters, and they represent all arts. There's music, there's dance, there's visual art. Our posters. When we first started, we are sponsored, I want to say, by Adelphi University, Gottesman Libraries, at Teachers College, Columbia University, and Sing for Hope. So when we began, the first poster was designed by a student at Adelphi, Jenna Ventura. Her poster's on the left. We then took it further and said, let's present this to other schools, other organizations, and one that came up was UTPL in Loja, Ecuador. A group of their students designed posters, and we selected one. We say selected and not winners because they are all winners, and you could see all the ones who submitted their work on our landing page. So then we took it further, and we asked a group from all over, one group from Greece responded to the call and said they were interested in designing our spring poster. At the time, we thought it was high school or middle school. It ended up being 4 to 6 students in a kindergarten class aged 4 to 6. They were taught by their teachers, who will come on right after this, exactly what you all said in the very beginning of this presentation, that art is a human right, that art is one that everyone should be able to express freely. So Despina Sakulo-Yorga is a kindergarten teacher with 15 years of teaching experiences. And she's the president of the Reggio-inspired network of Greece. Reggio is a pedagogy out of Italy, much like our Montessori schools here. Marina Zgourou is also a preschool teacher and the general secretary of Ring, and Garifalya Terizaki is the kindergarten teacher who taught these young children. I will play the YouTube after the Ring team presents. So, Despina, Garifalya, would you like to say something?
Good evening to all. I am Despina. It is a great honor of the Reggio-inspired network of Greece team to be part of this meeting. Argie and Carolina and everybody, thank you for the invitation. The Reggio-inspired network of Greece is a newly formed non-profit and non-governmental union which was established at the center of Athens on February in 2020. It was established by private and public sector professionals who support the child every day and its overall development. Professionals such as teachers, artists, psychologists, early years educators, as well as parents. Two of the main goals of the Reggio-inspired network of Greece are to defend the child at the heart of the learning process and to bring the arts at the forefront in education by building ateliers in each school. Garifalya Terizaki, who will speak next, is an active member of our network since the beginning. She does amazing work with her students, and now she's going to share an impressive sample of it with you. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Garifalya Terizaki, and I'm a kindergarten teacher and principal at the first kindergarten of Gargaliani, Greece. The knotted gun, also known as non-violence, which represents hope for a future without violence, inspired us to compose a poem with my young pupils. The children had spotted the knotted gun for the first time in a book on peace at our school. It made an immediate impression on them, and then they stayed on the page asking questions about the sculpture. Their interest in the knotted gun became a source of inspiration that led me to use it as a component in an artful thinking model combined with theatrical techniques. Before I knew it, the kids and I were in the middle of a creative writing workshop. Our poem essentially expresses what the children thought the knotted gun might be feeling. They were also asked why would the artist make such a sculpture and what could passers-by be thinking about when they stopped to look at this sculpture. They put themselves in the gun's place, gave it their voice, their feelings, and made it feel things. So, as an equal member of our team, I jotted down the children's thoughts, the words that came to their minds, their feelings, and the symbols attached to them, trying to combine the words chosen by the kids in a way that best expresses what they wanted to say. And that's how our story took the shape of a poem. The Weapon of Peace is the title that kids themselves gave to their poem. Thank you very much.
Okay, I'm just going to stop my share very quickly so I can maximize the screen. I'm sorry, and get it optimized for video clip. Okay, and I will play the video. Oh, come on. There we go.
Την κάνει του κόπου έδεσε και αποφάσισε κάθε πόλεμο μακριά να διώχνει. Δεν του άρεσε το θάνατο να διέβεται, ούτε τον πόνο να βλέπει. Υπάρχει ένα γιγάντιο όπλο που σταμάτησε να σκοτώνει. Φαντάζεται ότι στο κόσμο σκορπίζει γράμματα, αριθμούς, λουλούδια, χρώματα, νότες και λουλούδια. Και χαρούμενα τραγούδια. Δεν ήθελε και άλλα κλάματα να ακούει. Από τον τρόπο που σκορπά υπάρχει ένα γιγάντιο όπλο που δεν σκοτώνει. Ονειρεύεται. Στην αγκαλιά κοιμάται της ειρήνης. Άγλαμα ένας λήπτης το έκανε. Έργο τέχνη μόνο να μείνει. Δεν άντεχε άλλο πια με φιάλτες να χαϊδάβει μεγάλους παιδιά. Υπάρχει ένα γιγάντιο όπλο που χαμογελάει όταν βλέπει το κόσμο από κάτω τα πενά. Δεν κουράζεται ποτέ. Τους ανθρώπους να θυμίζει ότι πρέπει παντού η ειρήνη να μυρίζει. Πρώτα είναι πια γαλιά γαργαλιάδων.
Okay. Let me just get out of here. So, thank you, Ring Team. Thank you to the children that designed this, and they should be an inspiration to us all. So some of our networks, I think what is probably the best thing that came out of the Artivism initiative is how our presenters have created a community. They help each other, they network, not just among themselves, but with students as well. We have Bake Back America that helps support and supply materials to organizations like Felicia's Promise, to Afghan women, clothing, just so much. Anything you ask them for, they can get. Music on the Inside, we will have a performance at the end of the presentation by one of the Moti performers. We've had Main Inside Out, the deaf music documentary, Arte, who was just speaking. So our platform, we have music, visual arts, dance, theater, museums for all, Occupy Project, film, storytelling, poetry, community building, justice, equity, respect, human rights, criminal justice, feminism, environment. Our upcoming, or rather two of our upcoming presentations. One is Fashion Sustainable Materials by Hyunsu Alice Kim, The Earth Singing by Cartazina Sajez, and Ground Beneath Our Hearts with Treppy Johnson. Carolina, you want to add?
Yes, I would just like to welcome the audience to visit the Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube channels, because in there you'll find what we call the takeaways for each presentation, and they're so inspiring. At the end, the bottom line of Artivism is to inspire that fire within you to take action to change this society that we're living on now and make it a more dignified coexistence for all.
So Artivism provides the platform for artivists. And when we say artivists, they're artists and whatever their art may be. It could be research, it could be poetry, music, dance. So they come to our platform, they present for about an hour or so. Sometimes it goes over 2 hours if it's something that, well, Karlee, do you want to tell them about the poetry one?
Yeah, definitely. On that one there, it's about making the time to be very conscious about what we're presenting. So in other words, instead of presenting a translation, we took the time to have the works of art, the poetry in this case, presented in the original language in which it was written in the original tongue and the original language. It was also presented in the event, and then we also share a translation in English and in Spanish. We also would welcome you to check that one out. It was so powerful because they're languages that unfortunately some might be lost, but also we raise the question of which languages, how to present them, and how to move along with these traditions.
And we do have a kind of like a policy of reciprocity. So when you come to our forum to present, we ask our presenters if a student would like to do an internship, if they need resources, if they need a mentor, to please make yourselves available, not just to the students, but to other organizations. So it's this global now community. And we do have presenters from all over the world. We'll have somebody from India in the spring. There was Ecuador, there was Costa Rica, France, Poland. So one of our presenters is Karlee Rodrigues. She's a filmmaker. Carolina?
Yes, she's here today, and I will introduce her. Ms. Rodrigues is a MA Film and Media Studies graduate from Columbia University School of the Arts. She has presented her research on women in film and Luso-Brazilian cinema at various domestic and international university conferences in speaking towards the global impact of motion pictures. She also works together with her sister as a filmmaking duo. Together, they founded the production company Cinemanas, blending the words cinema and manos, sisters, to create films centered on women's experiences with themes of identity, cultural and betweenness, community, and collective dreaming. Most recently, they were selected for the 2020 and 2021 Women in Film Mentorship Program. In 2021, Gotham Film and Media Institute, formerly the IFP, owning it program, and finalists for the 2021 Humanitas Prize Drama Fellowship. So welcome, Ms. Rodrigues, please.
Thank you so much. I'm going to be screen sharing. Give me one moment. Can everyone see my screen in full view? Yeah, okay, I'm seeing some nods. Thank you so much. So thank you for having me here today, and Professor Argie and Catalina have been involving many artists to converse and practice artivism, which is a blending of art and activism. And my work is primarily in independent film. And for today, I want to share a personal story and some examples of how we can engage with advocacy work, specifically through art and the medium of film. So I want to start by taking you into Portugal's hilltops and my maternal grandparents' village of Arcos de Valdevez. And the village celebrates the country's expressive culture through the Feast of Our Lady of Lapa, an annual ethnographic festival that is locally known as a festa. And festas are filled with traditional cuisine, song, dance, and costume. They are found in every corner of the country and offer insights into rural communities' attempts to preserve traditional roots. Their event dates and times remain mysteriously elusive to outsiders and tourists who are not privy to word of mouth from locals. Still, hundreds of thousands of Portuguese and Luso descendants attend every year. And with these activities, festas capture the essence of what it means to be Portuguese, one that cannot be permeated by foreign influence. And this is really important because the mission of festas is using art to bring together the 1 in 5 Portuguese natives living abroad, one of the highest percentages in the world. So every year on my mother's side of the family, we reunite to maintain our shared cultural identity. But when I last attended a festa, I was taken aback with a new theme that was integrated into the closing ceremony of the celebration. And it's usually a boat parade on the Bej River. While indulging in local delights, I come together with thousands of spectators to see elaborate floats celebrating Hollywood blockbusters. Actors were dressed in fully costumed characters reenacting scenes, and instead of the Rancho Folclórico or the regional folk dance troupes, local singers performed Academy Award-nominated Best Original Songs ranging from the Titanic's My Heart Will Go On to James Bond's Skyfall. And the concluding song was from one of the most recent releases, A Star is Born Shallow, accompanied by a coordinated fireworks show. And as the performer belted the last Sha-ha-ha-lo, a larger-than life-sized Oscar lit up center stage. And notably, the Oscar was positioned alongside 2 large illuminations of a man and woman in full folkloric costume. I stood mouth agape at this latest Hollywood cultural imperialism, and I began to ask festival attendees, why they don't see their national cinema celebrated in their own cultural festival. And their response was, do they find value in us? So I had this question about national cinema, and my definition was analyzing the pictures produced by filmmakers in the country, what we come to see as a heritage film made in the country of origin about the country by its own citizens. But how could Portuguese films make up the country's national cinema if the majority of its citizens aren't watching them and instead flock to see American blockbusters? Is national cinema instead based on consumption? And to what extent is the Hollywood blockbuster culturally imperialistic, impacting the stories that are fundamentally known to champion this country's identity? For hundreds of years, families have passed down revivalist folklore through music, dance, costumes, and oral history. They are experienced storytellers, and yet, according to Box Office Mojo, all of the top-grossing movies are Hollywood productions. And this festival took place in the summer of 2019, so right before the pandemic. So if the Portuguese have continuously relied on story as an effective way to pass down traditional cultural customs, how does their intake of externally produced films complicate this goal of cultural preservation in finding value in themselves? These ramifications affect many countries. So I want to focus on mindfulness, and I want to ask all the attendees here today, what are we choosing to reflect on screen? What are we choosing to watch? How may we use film to build connection amongst global audiences as a means of cultural preservation and memory? And these conversations about representation are really important. First, I broke it down into 4 buckets, and if you have a piece of paper or if you want to type, I would love for you to jot down some ideas based off of these questions. And the first one is centered around individual responsibility. Have you ever tracked what films you have watched? What do you notice about your viewing patterns? When was the last time you've seen a film in another language by an international director? How often do you see films with female protagonists? Films by women directors? We have to first take our own accountability. The second is, where do you see these films? When thinking about programming a film festival, a streaming service, a gallery exhibition, an academic journal with essays, we really have to look into allowing space for these diverse perspectives to be seen. So what type of programming does your streaming service include? There are over 200 streaming services in the world. And are you visiting different art house theaters that might showcase more international films to gain new perspectives globally? The third is education, looking at syllabi. What is considered part of the canon? Who are the authors listed? What are the films listed? Who do we learn from? The next bucket is policy. How may we use policy to encourage diversity in the arts, making sure that there is parity in crew sets on set? Can a country tax American films to create funds that go back to filmmakers in the country to produce their own films? Can screening quotas help, making sure that there's a certain amount of national cinemas being seen by filmmakers in their own countries? Theaters must show X amount of contents. Could there be policy changes to encourage representation on screen and off? And my last bucket is preservation, the role of film archives in preserving cultural memory. And I want to highlight that these ramifications affect many countries globally. And I particularly want to share light on the Cinemateca Brasileira in Brazil. And for instance, for those who may not be aware, there have been a series of fires at various cultural institutions throughout Brazil. And the most recent one that many were concerned about was the Cinemateca Brasileira. In August of 2020, the federal government abandoned the Cinemateca Brasileira, which is one of the largest film archives in South America with over 120 years of Brazilian audiovisual history. All 41 technical staff were fired, and they were already working without pay for months. After the Cinemateca was locked, the workers issued many statements, including one in April 2021, stating, "We fear for the death of the Brazilian social, historical, cultural, cinematographic, and audiovisual memory." On July 24th, 2021, the workers protested again in São Paulo, and that's this picture here, just days before a fire did break out. destroying a few tons of materials. Archives and the history they hold are also fundamental to the cultural memory and the stories that we tell. And the Cinemateca Brasileira, fortunately, is currently will be reopening to the public. But I want to center on the role of film artivism, and through these questions, we see a few facets of how we can do so. But I want to emphasize that only through self-reflection and awareness can we learn from what we ourselves are placing value in and how we can shape the world around us and bring more diverse perspectives along with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rodrigues. Now, for a brief continuation of the presentation, Professor Argie just going to go over a bit here, but Ms. Rodrigues, would you like to share the little experience that you had with your student ambassador during your presentation?
Sure. So I met Rowan through Artivism as a student at Delphi University, and they were just so passionate about their work, and I really, really loved the poetry that they wrote. And this is one of their poems that I would love to share with you and read aloud. Professor Argie, do you have any other information that you would like to add?
Rowan was a student ambassador. She's a criminal justice and psychology major. Let me just share my screen one more time. I'm so sorry. Okay. And if you'd like, you can read her poem very quickly. And here we go.
Yes. This mask tricks you. It tricks me. It makes us believe that there is something to see. My mask takes me to another world, one of make-believe. My mask tells me the things that I am not, in fear of me becoming the things that I am. But I am more than a face hiding behind a mask. I am more than a concept too scared to be revealed. We are more than silent screams hidden under a face that does not belong to us. We are so much more than the mask you see. RMK.
Thank you, Karlee. Just very quickly, we did have an Artivist Award that was sponsored by Sync for Hope. The Artivist Award recipient was Cynthia Tobar and Louise Delias. They have a presentation on Saturday, which was funded partly by this award. Each student ambassador, so for each one of our events, we have a student ambassador who introduces the presenter, speaks about their own initiative, their own work, and then closes out the session, and they are given a certificate. So what Artivism does is it provides internships through their network. It's community building, it's networking. We have Faith Coleman, who is a dancer. She's a criminal justice and psychology major as well. And we promote our students' work. We try and involve them in everything we do. So if there's an exhibition coming up or an event like this, we reach out to our students and say, would you like to present your poem? Would you like to send a recording of your dance? Just some more of our networking. There is an Artivism Club now at Adelphi. Some upcoming events. And now we move to Dawood Rahman. He is a performer with Moti Music on the Inside. This is a photo of him from a performance from the Consulate General of Greece in New York City. He will be there tonight at the French Consulate. Dawood, are you here?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Let me just put this out. We do have a call for work and it's open to all. You can just email us your work at artivism@adelphi.edu. Okay, Dawood, take it away.
Okay, I'll close out with a tune from the R&B bag that those of us who've been around a little long, as myself might remember, from the Jackson 5. The name of it is I'll Be There. There's a very significant opening line. It says that you and I must make a pact. We must bring salvation back. And in the times that we are in, I think that the need for saving or salvation is very prominent. And Marvin Gaye made a statement in one of his famous recordings that pointed to the fact that not enough people care about saving the world, a world that's destined to die. And he gets into many reasons why this may be the case. Prominent among them, the ecological situation. But the tune that I'm going to play is not dealing so much with that issue, but just the opening line is very significant. And since it's instrumental, you can maybe look up the words. Jackson 5, and every tune's I'll Be There. I'll be there.
There we go. There we go. Thank you, Mr. Dawood. Let's hear it from Mr. Dawood. Everybody there. Just a brief moment, Ms. Bloomgarden. Would you like to jump on and talk about Moutafis, please?
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dawood. I don't know how much time we have left.
I'm so proud to be here and to hear everybody's work. It's so beautiful. I've been part of Artivism from the beginning with Carolina when I met her at Columbia University and Argie, and just to see the way it's growing, and it's so important. The arts have such an important role to play in our world right now, and it's so beautiful to see everyone coming together. Dawood gives us such great feeling. He served decades in prison and kept himself alive through music, and one of our great jazz musicians heard him on one of our Musicians for Justice concerts, and he says, I want to teach him, because he could hear the soulfulness in his playing. And he's been studying for 1.5 years now with Don Braden on saxophone and Barbara Cecil on flute, and we're just so proud of him, and it really shows the value of what we can bring when we just share, and it goes both ways. That's what I really feel about helping people who've been incarcerated. These are talented people that have so much to share, and it's so great when we can all access our human connection this way. So thank you, Dawood. Thank you, Carolina and Argie, and all of you. So proud of all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bloomgarden, for being part of this movement where we're trying to change and transform this moribund society. Just a brief catching back to the question that we started. Looking at the chat there, I noticed that we have Van Gogh, Picasso, Klimt, Shakespeare, Lenin, Michelangelo, Schrum, and Apollinaire. So what can we conclude from that list, right? Look at it really carefully. And if you notice, it's all men, Western European, right? And from, we can add other categories, but just to start off, no women, right? No people from other continents, right? So do you think that's possible, that our whole history, our whole culture is based in non-Western thought, that Asia, Latin America, Africa, Oceania doesn't have a say in our culture? Just, I'll leave you with that rhetoric question there. But as you know, here with the Artivism, it's about thought-provoking questions, thought-provoking conversations. And I would like to mention as well that the recurring theme is what Ms. Rodrigues, Karlee was saying. You know, what is our canon? What do we go by? What are we learning from, right? And that's what we're trying to just bring to mind and see how each one of us in our daily activities can start transforming that. A quote here, just briefly, that I'd like to share with you is, trust leads to opportunities. Opportunities to a dignified life. And that is what Artivism is. It was just an opportunity that came with a lot of teamwork, dedication, and a lot of love. And it has grown to be in this forum with you today. So keep on spreading that love, that trust, creating opportunities. One last thought here. I would like to thank Professor Argie Agelarakis, her family, and all at Adelphi University, Teachers College, Columbia University, and Sing for Hope for being part of this family of Artivism and the transformation. Back to you, Ms. Templeton.
All right, I think we're at the time when we can have Q&A. Is that true? It's not, let somebody tell me.
Yes.
Okay, all right, good. Well, thank you all. This has been an absolutely inspiring presentation, and I was so happy with Dawood's performance. I think we both have the same gray beard, so we must be about the same age. And I think I've probably heard that song as many times as he has, and I hadn't really paid attention to the words. So while he was playing, I looked up the words, and they're profound. And how those words kind of floated in and out of my ears without me really paying attention to how powerful they were. It took him pointing to the words and me looking them up and reading them to see how powerful they are. And all of you have really opened, I think, all of our minds and our hearts and our sensibilities to new ideas, to new ways of thinking for new concepts. And I want to thank all of you. So anybody have a question? I think you can put it in the chat or you could raise your hand. If you use the raise hand feature on reactions, go to reactions on the bottom of your screen and then it says raise hand. You can see who you are, we can call on you. And so far I see no questions.
I will say we're asked all the time. Yesterday as well at another presentation yesterday we had. What is artivism? What is artivism? Who here can answer that?
I would just go by saying artivism is you. Artivism is in you. Artivism is the power that you have to look to your, like look right here on the screen. If you put it on gallery mode, right? Look at the people that have their videos on, right? That's your artivism right there. What can you do for that person? What can you do to the person right next to you in your home, in your school, at work? Just a smile will make their day. Think about that. The artivism is the power of igniting that fire within you and others to bring about positive energy, love, and this transformation that we need in the world.
I want to mention that we have 4 absolutely amazing interns in our office, and they have really done a great job of pulling all of this together. And I see Rose Singleton has her hand up, and she is a student at Adelphi University and one of our interns, and really helped bring a lot of you to this meeting. And so I'm very grateful to her and to the other interns for putting this program together. So Rose, you have the floor.
I just wanted to say briefly that I've really learned, you know, from helping to put this webinar together with the 3 other amazing interns that I work with, that freedom of expression, art, music, painting, sculpture, woodworking is so critical to the human spirit. And I really have to thank Professor Argie, but she put this statement in my head that art is a human right. You know, a safe place to live, clean water, and access to art and artistic expression. So that's it for me.
Thank you, Rose. Anybody else? Our other interns? I know we're going to end with Brooklyn, but anybody else would like to speak?
Miss Bloomgarden asked to say something.
Yes, please. You have to unmute yourself.
Okay,
there
I
you
did.
go.
I just wanted to say, I've been thinking a lot about how we look at our world, the way Dawood mentioned it. How can we do things in our world, not waiting for the government to make these changes? And I think that's what's so important, that we just infuse our world through what each of us can do. It's sort of like calling upon ourselves with what we have to offer. And I always think that when we did our presentation through Artivism for the students, and it's like, think about what you can do. It doesn't have to be big, but each of us have something to contribute. And I think that's so crucial right now. And the arts have such an important role to play. And it has been undervalued in the schools, and certainly undervalued in criminal justice. And what I think about in criminal justice is everyone knows that people coming out of prison need jobs and housing, but people who've served decades in prison, you need to give these people a sense of our shared humanity again, have them feel that they are human beings just like the rest of us so that they can succeed. And I feel that that's what we do with our work with the arts. So I'm grateful for what everyone's doing. And I met Marissa when I was in Rikers Island, I think, and so good to see her again as well. Thank you all.
And I do want to say very, very quickly, I really admire the work these kindergarten teachers are doing with their young children.
Yes.
From at 4 to 6 years old, they're telling them art is your right. Everyone has to have that freedom of expression. So you instill that in these little minds. I mean, these are our future.
Yeah. Can that be
Oh.
shared with us, that beautiful video? Please, it's so beautiful. Thank you.
And just to let people know, we have recorded this session and the recording will be available to everybody. So we look forward to giving that to you. I want to mention a meeting I was at many years ago with a group of African Americans, primarily African American ministers. And they were talking about how during the times of slavery, you know, white people would point to the Bible and say, yeah, well, it says here in the Bible that slaves should obey their masters. And it was African American ministers that came to the conclusion finally that the overarching message of the Bible was liberation. And these ministers in the meeting I was at, he said, maybe it's time for us to change what we think about God and the Bible again. And instead of thinking of God as a punishing God, which then makes us punishing people, maybe we should think of God as a redemptive, loving, restorative God. And then that would make us loving, restorative, and redemptive people. And so we need, and I think through art, and we've seen this in these presentations, we can change how we think and see something much better. And I'll give Rose the floor one time more, and then we'll turn it over to Brooklyn to close us out.
Oh, thank you, Bruce. I just wanted to give a little special shout out to one of the attendees, Neil Waldman. He's the director of the Fred Dolan Art Academy in the Bronx. True disclosure, my daughter participated in the program for sixth graders and through high school, you know, giving the children of the Bronx and, you know, all of the boroughs, all the public school children, a chance to work on art, perfect their craft, realize that they can make a career out of art, giving them access to knowing that they can be in college and opportunities for scholarships. So I just wanted to say a special thank you to him for attending. You know, there's global issues, there's local issues, but art, whether it's 4-year-olds, 54-year-olds, 94-year-olds, it's all advocacy.
Thank you, Rose. Karlee, did you have anything you wanted to say?
It wasn't really a question, but the whole part that I can't remember who said it, and I was talking about using art in schools and counseling. I always tell people I went to a funny school. I went to Rudolf Steiner School, and they kept art in the curriculum throughout, all the way to high school. It wasn't something you stopped when you got into high school and you only did if you were good at. And I think that is something that is so important to anyone as just being human. I think the thing to create is in all of us. And I think to get at the very beginning of life in school is crucial. So whoever said it, I agree with them. But I love this whole thing. It was just so powerful.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Thank you, Karlee. Karlee Mistre is a student at Fordham University, and you could probably tell from her accent, she's originally from Scotland, but she's really a citizen of the world. Amanda Newlove, would you like to say something? Are you still here with us?
Yes, I'm still here. Thank you to our guests. It was a pleasure to hear what you're doing as someone who's studying social work and hoping to get into the advocacy space. It is so important to include art in this space and this profession. So I just, again, thank you for being here, and special thanks to all of the artists who shared their art with us today.
Thank you, Amanda. Amanda is a graduate student at NYU. And then we will close with Brooklyn Darling, who is a student at SUNY New Paltz in their Global Studies program, which is an amazing program. And we've had interns from that program for many years, and they've always been outstanding. So over to you, Brooklyn.
Hello, yeah, thank you everyone. Thank you to all of our participants, and a huge thank you to all of our speakers. It's been amazing. Like Bruce said, I am doing global studies, international relations, as well as cultural anthropology. And with that, it's one of the main things we learn about is storytelling through art and the things you can get done with that on a global level. So it's really so important to me personally, and it is a huge factor of global communication. So it's been amazing to learn about this, to hear from all of you, and to see how you're really using it as advocacy. So it's been an amazing webinar. And yeah, we really appreciate you all coming here to share your expertise. Like Bruce mentioned earlier, we did record this meeting and it will be available online, so you can access it after, you can share it to whoever you'd like. And yeah, so for further information on our events, you can follow us on our Instagram, and I will drop that in the chat box now. It is UU Office UN. So we're having a few other events in the upcoming months, so it would be great if we could see some of your faces again. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Brooklyn, and thanks to our entire audience. You really have been amazing, and I'm glad you've attended. I hope we all get a chance to work together again. I think our hearts are all in the right place, and we want to make this a better world, end incarceration, start loving and treating people the right way. I love the comments about how westernized our culture is. And I have lived in Africa and love it. I've lived in Asia and love it. There are many other parts of the world with many cultures and art and just wonderful experiences that we deprive ourselves of if we don't find those places and meet those people and immerse ourselves in these other cultural, artistic forms of expression. So thank you all. Be in touch. Thank you for being here, and we have more events coming up in March for the Commission on the Status of Women. We hope you'll join us for those events. We'll keep you in mind and keep you in touch. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.